Welcome everyone to the meeting and those watching online. And can I remind members that, as previously advised, it's anticipated as part of the consideration of the revenue budget, there will be a 2-hour recess, which will include a lunch break. Before moving on, I would like to advise members, on the 1st of February, I attended the funeral of former Provost Mike O'Malley at St Paul's Roman Catholic Church, with the Deputy Provost Kathleen Baird, Councillor Wilson and several long-serving former councillors. There was a large congregation of mourners paying their last respects to Mike, who worked extremely hard for this council and his constituents. Those of us who knew Mike found him to be a genuine, kind and hard-working with a big heart and personality. He is sorely missed. Members, as you're aware, I have agreed to allow one member per group to speak. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Alison Berry have asked to say a few words. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, everyone. Yes, Mike was a big guy, as you said, with a big personality and a big heart. He approached his provostship with diligence, fun, and a great ability to meet and greet people and warmly welcome them, whether they were local or from our parts of our globe. He carried out his duties with great dignity and also a huge sense of humour. As you've said, Provost, we were at his remembrance service, and he will be greatly missed in his communities. I think everybody will remember him for a whole variety of things, including his rescue in a boat for folk in North Muirton during the floods. If there was an issue, Mike was on the case, and he was just an excellent councillor and a good advocate for his communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Bailey, please.
Thank you, Provost. The news of the death of former Provost Mike O'Malley was received with great sadness in the Labour movement and beyond in Perth. He represented North Muirton with energy and passion throughout his time on the council. Mike made his reputation with the work he did. There are photos somewhere of him in a dinghy alongside the fire service from the time when most of North Muirton and Muirton were underwater in 1993. He helped those who needed the help the most. When he discovered that a significant number of people didn't have insurance in the area of those floods, he led appeals for financial help and succeeded in getting funding for everyone to help them replace things in their homes and put their homes back together. He was also active in football coaching. He coached the North Muirton under-18s team, who were the top junior team in PKC at that time. He retired after stepping down in 2003 with his wife Kate out in Scone. Mike was the first and only Labour Provost in Perth and Kinross and will be remembered and missed by many in Perth and beyond. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Ling would like to speak.
Thank you very much, Provost. I bow to the people who worked with Councillor Mike O'Malley. None of the current SNP group have worked, and I think it was pertinent that these people who knew him and knew him well were allowed to speak and spoke well of him. Anybody who does public service as Michael O'Malley did deserves the praise of all of us. And I'd just like to add the SNP group's condolences and best wishes to his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ling. I'm sure councillors, Mike would be absolutely delighted to hear the kind words that has been expressed today. Councillor Lyle, you would like to speak.
Yep, thank you very much, Provost. Just to say that I first met Mike O'Malley, I believe, in 1998, and enjoyed the stories that he was able to recount around the actions of the councillors in that time. And when I was vice chairman of the Perth Show and Perth Agricultural Society, I had the pleasure of accompanying Mike round the show for a whole day, which I have to say was an experience for him, as he knew little of livestock, but his equal equally an experience for me, as I knew little of politics. And the way he conducted himself throughout the whole day was an experience, and one of the things that enthused me about the work of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lyle. Are there any other contributions? Thank you very much. I would like now to move on to this wonderful curling team we've got. The members 20 years ago, after Rona Martin slid her final stone down the Ogden ice sheet in Salt Lake City, Eve Muirhead and her teammates Vicky Wright, Jennifer Dodge, Hayley Duff and alternate Millie Smith swept to an emphatic 10-3 win over Japan 3 days ago in Beijing. These past 2 years we've had much to cheer about. We've never had much to cheer about, but Eve Muirhead and her triumphant team have brought a much needed smile to our faces. Make no bones about it, it has also put Perth and Kinross on the world map. You do not become an Olympic champions without sheer hard work, determination and teamwork. Can I ask you, everyone, to join me in congratulating our Olympic curling heroes?
Here.
Here.
Here, absolutely.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'm going to move on now to comments. We've got Councillor Duff here, please.
Thank you, Provost. As one of the councillors covering the Blair Athol and Pitlochry area where Eve Muirhead was raised and where she first became involved in the sport of curling, I was absolutely delighted to watch Eve and her Team GB colleagues winning the Olympic gold medal at Beijing at the weekend. It was a fantastic and well-earned victory and is the highlight of an outstanding international curling career for Eve especially. Provost, I would like to express both the pride and the congratulations of this council and through us, those of everyone in Perth and Kinross on what a marvellous Olympic gold medal winning performance. Well done, Team GB. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor McDade, please.
Thank you, Provost. Very proud of Team Muirhead and indeed all of our Team GB athletes. I actually went to school with the Muirhead family at Pitlochry High School, and my proudest sporting moment was coming second to one of the Muirheads in a curling competition. So this is a very special moment indeed for our constituents up here. There are already many calls for golden post boxes, and indeed I hope that the council might consider giving our two local gold medalists the freedom of the city, which I think they so rightly deserve. I think this is a very special moment for Perth and Kinross, and I join Councillor Duff and yourself in expressing the council's pride in our athletes, and I hope that we will recognise them in a suitable way in the near future.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I'd like to add my congratulations as well to Eve Muirhead and her rink. Eve Muirhead was originally a Kinrossshire girl and in her early years moved to Blair Athol. I would just like to say a wee bit about the way the British rinks performed, especially Bruce Mowat and Eve, the way that they portrayed themselves and the way the whole games were actually conducted in a very sporting and fair way. And I think it was a great credit to both curling as a game and to them, the way they conducted themselves and made us proud to be both British and, for myself, a curler. So well done and congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Can I call on Councillor Lane, please?
Thank you, Provost. I think we'll all join together and congratulate the team for a wonderful success. Having played curling myself, obviously not to anywhere near the standard of these young women, I can appreciate how much a team game curling is, and all 5 members of each team have worked together. The person who sweeps the stone can make as much a difference to the stone as the person who delivers the stone. Every one of them are working together, and it was great to see these 4, 5 young Scots women coming together from different parts of Scotland to represent the UK at the Olympics. But it just shows you, I think if we are going to give an honour, we should give an honour to the whole team, because one part of the team will not work and win the medals without the other. And I think they've got, as a team together, they did fantastically well.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. We see Councillor Williamson has asked to speak as well. I'm going to allow that, even though we're going to be one per group. And this will be the last one. Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, Provost. I would like to endorse everything that my fellow councillors have said about the success of the Olympic curling team in China. I think we all feel part of the success and proud of the success, and I endorse what Grant Lane has said about it should be for the whole team rather than just individuals.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. I think these are just wonderful expressions of support to the team. They've done exceptionally well. Before moving on to ask the clerk to confirm some apologies, we're all a bit astounded that so many people are shouting for an award for them, which is absolutely correct. But it's just a little bit early yet. It's only been 3 days, but the council, the officers and everybody is working hard, and they will be looking at this at some time very soon. But just as members of the press, just give us a little bit of breathing space. But it's wonderful to hear all the wonderful expressions this morning. Can I now ask the clerk, Danny, to confirm any apologies and take a roll call of attendance, please?
Yes, thank you, Provost. We've no apologies, excuse me, no apologies received formal this morning, so I will go through the list. And members, if you can let me know whether you are present when I call your name. Councillor Ahern.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Deputy Provost.
Present.
Councillor Barnacle.
Present.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Present.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Present.
Councillor Braun.
Present.
Councillor Brock.
Present.
Councillor Audrey Coates. Councillor Harry Coates. Move on. Councillor Donaldson. Okay. Councillor Drysdale.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Present.
Councillor Forbes.
Morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Present.
Councillor Illingworth.
Present.
Councillor James.
Morning, Danny. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Councillor Lang.
Delighted to be present in 2 High Street once again. Thanks.
Councillor Lyle.
Present.
Councillor Massey.
And I'm delighted to be present in 2 High Street as well. This is the first time.
Councillor McCall.
Present and at home. Thank you.
Councillor McCall.
Present virtually.
Councillor McDade.
Present.
Councillor McEwen.
Present.
Provost.
Present.
Councillor Parrott.
Here in 2 High Street.
Councillor Pulver.
Present.
Councillor Purvis.
Present.
Councillor Rebeck.
Present.
Councillor Reid.
Present.
Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Councillor Sarwat.
Present.
Councillor Shires.
Present.
Councillor Simpson.
Present.
Councillor Smith,
Good morning to everyone present.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Thank you.
Could you just do a check, see if we're doing
Councillor Waters.
Present, Danny.
Okay. Councillor Williamson
Present, Danny.
and Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Okay. And I've just got back. On counts, Councillor Harry Cox present.
Okay.
I'll take that as a no, but keep an eye on that as we progress. So, Provost, if you're happy to progress, that's the roll call completed.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny. Can I ask, are there any declarations of interest to today's meeting? No, I can't see anything. At this stage, I'm going to ask Council, would you agree to vary the...
Provost, there are declarations of interest.
Have some come in?
Yes.
Can't see them.
It's just a bit of a delay on the chat. Declarations of interest from Councillor Braun, then Councillor McEwen, and then Councillor McDade. Councillor Braun.
Yes, Provost, I have a non-financial interest in Live Active Leisure.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes, similarly, I have a non-financial interest in Live Active Leisure.
Councillor McDade.
I have a non-financial interest as a voting member of the Integration Joint Board.
Councillor Purvis.
I have a non-financial interest as a board member of the Integration Joint Board and also as a trustee of Horsecross Arts.
Councillor Rebeck.
Similar non-financial declaration of interest as a member of Live Active Leisure. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
A declaration of interest, non-financial interest as a board member of the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Councillor Drysdale.
A declaration of non-financial interest in the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board.
Councillor Duff.
Similarly, a declaration of non-financial interest in the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board.
Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Jarvis.
Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble this morning. Non-financial interest as a member of Horsecross Board and also Perth Culture Trust.
Councillor Parrott.
Non-financial interest in Culture Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Non-financial interest in Horsecross.
Councillor McCall.
Non-financial interest as a proxy member of the Integration Joint Board.
And finally, Councillor Ahern.
Non-financial interest as a board member of Culture Perth and Kinross.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Move on. Can I ask you, the councillors, to agree to vary the order of business and consider item 3 at the end of the agenda today?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, councillors. Members, I'm going to now pass the remainder of the business. I beg your pardon?
Councillor Drysdale's got a point of clarification.
Councillor Drysdale, I understand you've got a point of clarification.
I do. Thank you, Provost. Provost, I've been advised at 9:17 this morning by the Head of Legal and Governance that you are not minded to allow Council to debate an emergency motion that I have tabled for today's meeting. That motion was to ask Council to intervene to ensure that there is no breach of the service level agreement between the Council and Live Active Leisure. It is my contention that by implementing the planned termination of gym services at Rodney Centre in my ward within the next few weeks, this would breach that agreement and would also directly result in the removal of the quality sprung floor in the coaching hall at Bell's Sports Centre, also in my ward. Of course, I must and do respect your decision, Provost, but can you please clarify why you do not consider this urgent matter to merit urgent discussion today by this council? Thank you.
Councillor Drysdale, I took the advice from the Head of Legal Services that it wasn't an emergency motion at this time. I think I mentioned in my email to you also that that the meeting on the 9th of March could be could be raised then. But I've ruled on it with the advice that we've given from Head of Legal Services, and I don't think I can do any more than that today.
I note your decision. Thank you, Provost, and as I say, I do respect it. Thank you for the clarification, and I will bring this back on the 9th of March. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryder. I'm now going to pass the remainder of the business to Deputy Provost Kathleen Baird.
Good morning, councillors, and I'd like to invite Stuart Mackenzie, Head of Finance, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and good morning, councillors. I will keep my remarks brief. The report sets out the development of the Council's 2022-23 Provisional Revenue Budget. Members have previously been advised of the Council's funding position, and political budget review groups have been supported in their consideration of the proposals within this report. In considering next year's revenue budget, I would remind members of the significant financial challenges and uncertainties facing the Council going forward. This includes an underlying structural budget deficit currently amounting to £7.6 million, which will require to be addressed on a sustainable basis. As outlined within the report, officers will bring forward a programme of transformation and change later this year to support meeting these challenges. Council is asked to approve the updated 2022-23 Provisional Revenue Budget, including the funding of non-recurring budget pressures of just over £5.2 million, the delay in implementing the review of social care contributions, and the proposed funding for Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board of £70.9 million next financial year. Council is also asked to approve the earmarking of reserves as set out in Appendix I of the report, and to approve that uncommitted reserves are maintained at a minimum of 2% of the net revenue budget. To conclude, Council is asked to determine the final revenue budget and set the Council tax for 2022-23 based upon a recommended budget collection rate of 98%. I would thank colleagues for their support in the development of the revenue budget. Colleagues and I are happy to take questions, Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much, Stuart. So, if members have any questions, can I ask them to put a Q in the chat box, please? I don't see anyone wishing to ask a question at the moment, but maybe my chat box is a bit slow, so no one wish to ask any questions?
Councillor Donaldson.
Now we've got one from Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Normally, on a paper like this, I would ask about the statistics, the figures, but in actual fact, I want to turn to the whole issue of transformation, pages 26 to 28. We did, as a council, have previously a transformation programme. Under this administration, that programme was dropped. We've now moved back to a new transformation programme. It states, the question is, a transformation board will be established. Can I ask when it's intended that that will be indeed up and running and go into effect? Secondly, along with that, how does that board, how will it sit within the corporate structure along with the executive officer team? And thirdly, it does report to strategic policy and resources, but can I assume that it will also be subject to scrutiny and audit? Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson, Chief Executive will take that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, for your question. In terms of the establishment of the Transformation Board, the executive team are in discussions about the establishment, remit and membership of that board, and will bring a further report back to Council or to SPNR rather at a later date. And we will set out how that will fit within our internal officer governance structures, and also how that will report to members both through SPNR and clearly if there's a view that it needs to be scrutinised, if that will be brought to scrutiny. So we will provide that further information in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Barnacle.
So, could I just ask supplementary?
Yes, you may, Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, just to ask, will that, so I think we can assume that am I right in saying that the Transformation Board will not be up and running until after the elections in May? Have particular areas as yet been identified for transformation? I'm thinking in particular of the council's property estate and the position obviously with Buller House.
Thank you
Executive
again.
will answer.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Thank you again, Councillor Donaldson. We will establish the officer governance structures in advance of the election, and in terms of the estate, that will form one element of the transformation programme as a separate work stream. So again, we will confirm the detail of the various elements, but we can confirm that our estates will form one element of that programme.
Thank you. Councillor Barnacle.
Yes, thanks, Deputy Provost. I just have one point specific to community transport. In October 21, I asked officers to prepare a business case to purchase a small minibus, including cost of training and employing drivers to operate a community transport service in West Kinross because of cuts to local services. I don't see any reference in the budget to addressing that issue, and I wondered if that had been missed or whether there's some provision I'm missing. Thank you.
Perhaps Barbara, would you like to answer that question?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Councillor Barnacle, in relation to any kind of community transport, then we will be looking at, this as a transformation project. I am, looking at some colleagues within the room here in terms of that particular, issue, but we will have to come back to you specifically on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. On page 55 of our papers in Appendix C, item 10, there is climate change community support, building and energy support. And I'd like officers to be able to describe the benefits to this spend for the council and for our council tenants.
Thank you. Barbara, are you able to answer this one?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The purpose of this particular request for funding is linked to the fact that we know that there are some community groups already established who are providing very good, robust advice, impartial advice to our communities, both to, tenants and non-tenants. So it is really to make sure that, we can, source, and spread that approach, because we know that that has been very well received across, some parts of Perth and Kinross, but not all. And that's the purpose of it, Councillor McEwen.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't see anyone else wishing to ask a question. So having said that, I would now like to invite Councillor Lyle to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost, and I assume everyone can hear me adequately. Before I begin the main content of this motion, I would like to acknowledge and once again acknowledge that this has been a really challenging revenue budget for us all in Perth and Kinross Council, and certainly one of the most difficult budgets we've had to set. However, I'm proud today to bring forward the fifth budget of our Conservative administration. This budget continues to build on the themes we have consistently committed to over the last 5 years. Provost, I will remind the Chamber of our key priorities, which are education and families, economic well-being, communities, climate change, environment and infrastructure, and corporate initiatives. Deputy Provost, without doubt, our citizens have always been at the heart of our approach. Over the last 5 years, I am extremely proud of this administration's achievements in the delivery of all our themes. Provost, time this morning is at a premium, and as such, I cannot fully reflect the positive impact of our budget decisions over the last 5 years. However, I would like to remind the Chamber of some of the key highlights. We have enhanced opportunities for our children, our young people, by investing in areas such as additional support needs, virtual campuses, and protecting teacher numbers. In support of our communities, we have provided funding to take forward the hugely popular Community Investment Fund, as well as support for care and wellbeing cooperatives, placing communities at the heart of our local funding decisions. In terms of economic wellbeing, we have supported small and medium local businesses with grant funding through initiatives such as Adapt Your Property, Open for Business and crowdfunding. As leader of the council, I was delighted when we signed the Tay City deal, which will result in millions of pounds of investment in culture, transport infrastructure and digital connectivity. As part of this, the City Hall is being reimagined along with other investment in culture at Pitlochry Festival Theatre. The Clorstay Link Road will open up significant opportunities for housing and businesses in that area, and there is now a full fibre network providing gigabit connectivity across key council data centres and public facilities within Perth and Kinross. Much of our focus over the last 2 years has rightly been in responding to the COVID pandemic, while supporting our most vulnerable, our communities and our businesses. This time last year, we were still in the midst of a global pandemic. We adopted a prudent approach to our revenue budget setting, and in keeping with the reputation of this administration and the council as a whole, this budget today provides the opportunity to reflect on the challenges of the last 2 years and seeks to build confidence across the whole council area as we learn to live with COVID. In the last 12 months, the council has approved 3 key strategies: the Economic Wellbeing Plan, the Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, and the Perth and Kinross Offer Framework. These are at the heart of our budget proposals today, linking as they do our agreed themes and establishing the foundations for the next council. The budget I present today reflects the priority of the Scottish Conservative and Unionist councillors across Perth and Kinross. Provost, I am confident these themes will continue to find support across the whole chamber and in all our communities. Before I speak on each of these themes, I would like to remind everyone of the context in which we have prepared this budget today. Firstly, while the council received some additional funding this year, the vast majority of this increase is directed by the Scottish Government to specific initiatives, reducing the opportunity for local decision making, especially when inflation is taken into account. Secondly, while the additional funding that was forthcoming was late in the process, it is explicitly non-recurring and therefore has a limited impact on the council's finances and sustainability. Our first priority, turning to that, is education and families. Once again, education, schools and our children's future have ranked highly with our residents in the budget consultation exercise. I am therefore pleased to report that education and families are, once more, key features of our budget. In addition to our core investment in education, we propose to continue with almost 100,000 of investment, which will target resources aimed at getting all children disadvantaged by long periods of home learning back on track with their studies. We also propose 136,000 to continue access to national qualifications and foundation apprenticeships through additional staffing for each of our 11 secondary schools. This will allow our pupils to continue to access a much wider variety of academic and vocational courses and further provide qualification opportunities for our young people. Alongside this, we continue to commit 90,000 to work with schools and communities to implement a model of family support linked to the promise for all care experienced infants, children and young people, adults and their families, to ensure that every child should grow up loved, safe, respected and able to realise their full potential. The Council has a proud record of commitment to our looked after and care experienced youngsters, and we are 100% committed to ensuring the words in the promise become a reality. I would therefore like to take the opportunity to thank all those partners who serve as corporate parents and who take their responsibilities in these roles so seriously. I am delighted to advise Council today that the administration is fully reinstating the budgets for school crossing patrollers and for primary swimming lessons. In addition, there will be no increases in the education and children's services charges, showing our ongoing support for those more vulnerable and those organisations whose schools and campuses are used. This administration recognises the importance of the work being undertaken by the YMCA locally and through their ambitious project to reimagine the old St Andrews and St Stephen's building in Athol Street, Perth. This will provide an advanced and innovative youth centre along with 4 flats, a cafe and a shop, together with employment opportunities for young people. And as such, I am pleased to commit £50,000 today to enable the completion of this exciting development, which supports our ambitions for young people and for the City of Perth. Secondly, Deputy Provost, economic development. The last 2 years have been hugely challenging for our businesses. Our towns, our villages, Perth City and our regional economy have been considerably impacted, and this administration is committed to supporting them further in our budget today. In addition to the previous measures in our budget last year, this administration will commit substantial assistance to aid economic recovery again this year. Our first initiative is a skills passport. We are continuing to commit £125,000 to provide funding grants of up to £2,000, which will assist people to attend training courses or purchase equipment to help them with the skills they need to enter the workplace. We are also investing £100,000 in the Business Gateway Accelerator programme, which has proved so successful in supporting high growth startup businesses and targeting this investment this year, particularly in 4 areas: clean growth, engineering, food and drink, and creative industries. Following the continued success of our Adapt Your Property scheme, we are providing a further £300,000 to help convert underused or vacant commercial space in our high streets for new and more appropriate uses. Our Open for Business Fund commits a further £200,000 to encourage rural town centre businesses to update their street frontages and to give grant assistance to support empty property initiatives. In addition, this administration is continuing our Visitor Management Fund to assist our rural communities to cope with the increased visitor footfall during the summer months. This will be supplemented by a further £40,000 for visitor facilities across the council area. We welcome the support of our partners in the Health and Social Care Partnership for our Get Into Care project, which will deliver a bespoke pre-employment training programme to address recruitment challenges across the health and social care, particularly in our rural areas. Deputy Provost, I am also delighted to confirm this administration's support to the Perth West Eco Innovation Park. This will be Scotland's largest net zero carbon development. It includes a renewable energy generation park and new residential neighbourhoods. Perth West will support businesses and growth and create over 1,000 high-value jobs in Perth and Kinross. Our administration will also offer continued support to small and micro rural businesses through £100,000 of funding to GrowBiz. Our third priority is communities, Deputy Provost. I would now like to turn to this aspect. Much of our success has been built on a commitment to working with communities and with our partners. This model of continuing to work together with others to face the challenges going forward is the basis of the framework we have set out for the Perth and Kinross offer. One of the administration's proudest achievements has been the establishment of the Community Investment Fund, providing direct grants to community groups across Perth and Kinross to invest in projects that are important to them. In this coming year, there will be a further 100,000 available through the fund, giving a total of 400,000 investment this year for our needs of our communities. On top of this, we propose to invest a further £260,000 in 4 key initiatives. Firstly, we will invest 100,000 in food security. This builds on the strengths of our own food security programme in schools and on the wealth of community-led initiatives that have come to the fore, particularly over the last 2 years during COVID. This funding will allow these projects to extend from organising food distribution projects and redistributing supermarket surpluses to activities such as teaching people to cook nutritious meals from inexpensive ingredients in their own homes. Secondly, Deputy Provost, to promote digital inclusion, we will invest a further 50,000 in addition to the 150,000 we have provided this year. In an increasingly digital age, this funding will allow community groups to continue their excellent work. Thirdly, we want to build skills and capacity within our communities to deliver the Perth and Kinross offer. We will provide 80,000 for equipment, training and other practical things to allow communities to turn great ideas into reality. Finally, under our communities theme, we will provide an additional 30,000 for support to Bloom Groups and Friends of Cemeteries. This will allow them to build on the highly successful visible initiatives that are already benefiting Perth and Kinross and benefiting the communities right across Perth and Kinross. Fourthly, climate change, environment and infrastructure. Deputy Provost, in December 2021, this council set out its long-term ambitions for the protection of our natural environment and responding to the climate change challenges within our new climate change action plan. We are beginning the journey with £500,000 of recurring investment in our strategies for electric vehicles, mobility and the council's non-domestic estate, as well as carbon sequestration through tree planting and smart energy projects. This administration wants to ensure that our local infrastructure is up to the standards that our local residents have a right to expect and create a better local environment for us all. Last year, this administration provided the largest single investment in roads. This year, on top of our annual roads maintenance budget of 10 million, I can today announce a further investment of 4 million. And this will be across our roads and bridges. Bridges are a vital part of our road network, and by investing 2 million in our bridge infrastructure over the next 2 years, alongside a further 2 million in roads for next year, we are recognising their importance to our communities and to our roads network. In addition, understanding the importance of these issues to our residents, we are investing 100,000 in additional gully cleaning and 300,000 in road safety measures. Our commitments today demonstrate that we have continued to recognise that our roads are a top priority for our local residents, and it is a top priority for local Conservatives too. In winter weather, it continues to present us with challenges. As such, we have rejected all the savings options that were put forward for winter maintenance, which would have seen a significant reduction in the level of service during periods of bad weather. Collectively, these measures provide a significant Conservative investment in climate mitigation and local infrastructure, despite the financial challenges that we all face. Recognising the continued impact of the pandemic on domestic abuse, today I am pledging an additional £30,000 to Women's Aid to help support vulnerable women who find themselves in these extremely difficult and challenging circumstances. In addition, I am further committing the same amount to RASAC to support their ongoing and important work. Finally, Deputy Provost, we come to corporate initiatives. Partnership working is key to the ongoing success as our ongoing success as a council, and this has been reflected in the dedicated and committed work that we undertake with our colleagues in other organisations. To demonstrate this commitment, I am pleased to advise the Council that our budget passes on all the additional social care funding that we have received through the Health and Social Care Partnership to ensure support for our most vulnerable residents. Provost, we are fully aware that our ambitious capital programme has ongoing consequences for the revenue budget. As a result of our budget adds 250,000 to loans charges to ensure that it remains sustainable for many years to come. Today, I can re-emphasise our commitment to the PH2O project, which we will consider later, to deliver a fantastic new leisure facility for the city and for the people of Perth and Kinross, as well as creating a further visitor attraction for the area. Deputy Provost, to respond to the challenges we have faced, this administration has always sought to modernise, improve and to help deliver and develop services. As we move forward, we recognise the need for change, which will be delivered through an organisational-wide programme of transformation and change. This transformation approach will recognise the drivers which are impacting on all local authorities, such as increasing demand, significant financial challenges, and how we work with our communities to deliver services. Our budget today leaves significant funding in reserves to support what will be a fundamental shift to how the council is organised in the future, as well as delivering further efficiencies. This is why we are recognising over 5 million of financial pressure on our revenue budget on a non-recurring basis for 1 year only. This covers additional expenditure and delayed savings. Our prudent approach will still leave significant funds in the COVID-19 earmarked reserve to help us manage the financial challenges of 22-23 and beyond. Finally, Deputy Provost, we are fully aware of the pressures on households. This administration's careful and considered approach to this year's budget has allowed us to minimise the council tax increase to 2.5%, reducing from the previously approved 4.25%. It is testament to the commitment of both councillors and council officers alike that we are here today to determine the council's budget, and I would like to record my personal thanks, particularly to the finance team, but certainly to everyone who has been involved in preparing this budget. Deputy Provost, I would like to pay tribute to the staff across the council. Everyone has continued to be challenged by COVID-19 this year, and I would like to thank our staff who have worked tirelessly to support our communities, our citizens in the most difficult of circumstances, and I would reflect that they deserve our gratitude from across the chamber. Finally, Deputy Provost, this budget invests in our children and families. It invests in our economic well-being. It invests in our communities. It invests in the climate change and in our infrastructure. It also minimises the financial impact on all our households with a below inflation council tax increase this year. On behalf of my Conservative colleagues, I commend this budget to the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lyle. Can I invite Councillor Smith to second, please?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I am delighted to formally second Councillor Lyle's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, can I inform all members that the Conservative motion will now be sent out as an email in your email box, and as each leader speaks, the motion will be the amendment will be sent out, so you'll all have it as emails. Okay, thank you. Can I now invite Councillor Lane to move the first amendment? Councillor Lane.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Provost. My speech today will not labour on the amount of funding or perceived lack of it from different governments, etc. That I will leave to others. I intend to focus on what really matters to the residents of Perth and Kinross. I'll use my time to put forward the case and the vision that this SNP budget has on spending the funding available to us at this time. The SNP budget proposes a council tax increase of 2.73. We feel that this is a fair and reasonable figure and takes into account the many other inflation pressures that Perth and Kinross residents are facing. The SNP budget will take cognizance of the difficulties surrounding all the residents, charitable organisations and community groups that live and operate within Perth and Kinross. Difficulties that are out with the control of these individuals, or indeed groups of individuals. Residents are seeing the perfect storm of rising electricity costs, rising gas costs, rising petrol and diesel costs, coupled with soaring food prices and private rental prices, alongside the effects of COVID-19 and Brexit. The upcoming huge rise in national insurance payments required by the Tory UK government will hit hard across all of our local authority. The SNP budget will try and address the difficulties that we all face and will use the funding available to mitigate many of the proposals to cut frontline services. If an SNP administration is returned in May, we will call for a new budget meeting as soon as possible. We will endeavour to put our proposals into action. I understand that not one political group has all the answers, and we'd be happy in the future to incorporate ideas from others into the offer we give to our residents, as well as listening to the residents and communities themselves. There's no point in making a budget statement one day and then walking away and leaving officers to get things done, as seems to have happened in the recent past. A budget is a statement of intent, but also a living document. And I can assure you that if this SNP budget or any future SNP budget is voted through, we will ensure by continually working with officers that our strategic aims and policies are enacted in a timely manner. The SNP Group understands the pressures that council departments are under, and we accept all but one of the expenditure pressures. We do not accept increasing the fee to be paid to another local authority for managing the Tay Cities deal by £50,000. To maintain frontline services and opportunities, the SNP Group reject the proposed savings proposals as listed below. The SNP Group reject the further removal of school crossing patrollers, as although parents are responsible for getting their children to school, we feel that in this financial climate we cannot force them to make the choice between work and their children's safety. We reject the removal of primary swimming lessons for our young people, and we will continue to support the promotion of this important life school. We reject the full removal of school supply contingency budget for teachers. We wish to maintain the current flexibility we have, especially among smaller schools, to cover teacher absence. We reject the reduction of teacher numbers in our primary schools of 6 posts. We reject the increase in charges within ECS. We wish to encourage lets within the council estate and use our assets to benefit all residents. The SNP Group wish to maintain and improve the way Perth and Kinross looks both for visitors and Perth and Kinross residents, as well as to maintain the safety of everyone. To this end, the SNP Group also reject the following proposals. We reject the reduction in funding in community green space, which would be an 8% reduction in planned maintenance and a 10% cut in play area maintenance, as this does not follow the ethos of this SNP Group. We reject the removal of provision for peak summer service, as we wish to maintain and enhance the way Perth and Kinross looks. We reject increased bereavement charges. We reject the proposal to close the toilet facility in Dunkeld in the winter season. We reject the proposal to remove all out-of-hours normal treatments of food waste. We also reject the proposal to reduce the length of road network receiving priority winter maintenance by 20%, which would have meant 182 kilometres of the road network having its road gritting and clearing criteria downgraded. We reject the increase in gritting times for Category 1 routes to 3 hours, which would mean an increase in the time taken before these routes would be required to be treated. Finally, we also reject the proposal to cut the number of modern apprentices by 33%. This is a PKC success story and should not be reduced in any way. The scale of these rejections shows that the SNP Group wishes to protect the service that we already have. Our only additional savings proposal is that a review of the support that senior management within the council requires. This review will be tasked with achieving a recurring saving of £100,000. We now come to the additional spending proposals from the SNP Group. I will not go through every one of those proposals. listed as my group will wish to talk to many of these proposals during the debate. It's suffice to say that many members of my group have had input into this budget amendment paper and brought their individual expertise to these proposals. I will, however, give an overview as to the aims and objectives of the way we have chosen to employ the COVID Reserve Fund. Primary swimming. This extra funding is to ensure that children who were unable to take up the offer of swimming lessons at primary school because of COVID-19 are able to take advantage of a scheme to learn this important life skill. Licensing. This funding is to allow events or organisations who have paid to license event which has not taken place because of COVID-19 to be able to renew their licences at a discounted price. We wish to support our nighttime economy in Perth and to allow rural residents the chance to travel and stay later on Friday evenings. We propose supporting Horsecross Arts, Culture PKC and LAL and help stabilise their funding situation as they emerge from the pandemic. We plan to increase the welfare rights team by 3 members of staff to deal with financial hardship and poverty, and that is hitting those both out of and in work. We will not just employ 3 members of staff, but will provide £600,000 of funding in this year through our financial inclusion proposal. We proposed to tackle mental health issues by providing tackling mental health and health issues by providing £250,000 to social prescribing scheme and £100,000 to support mental health groups which already exist within Perth and Kinross. We wish to commit £600,000 to the local action partnerships to enable them to continue tackling inequality issues within their communities. We wish to create a resilience fund to deal with emergency situations, mainly weather emergencies, but any other emergencies that we encounter. These weather emergencies are occurring much more frequently, and this £600,000 fund will cover a variety of initiatives as explained in the budget amendment narrative. One of the most important issues we all have to tackle, including the Council, is climate change, and the SNP group are very happy to commit over £1 million to various schemes which are listed in our amendment and will be expanded by others of my group. We will also fund on a recurring basis further capacity within the Council to drive forward these initiatives. The Council has agreed a paper on climate change, but unfortunately this Tory administration does not seem committed to acting on it. 230,000 foil containers go to landfill annually as a result of their desire to have frozen meals provided for our school children. No climate change emergency bias applied when services are being procured, not even a willingness to provide subsidised public transport at Christmas rather than free car parking. If an SNP administration is returned in May, we would change the committee structure to include a climate change committee, which would have the remit to look at all council papers from a climate change perspective and comment on them. The SNP group recognises the important work that all voluntary organisations throughout Perth and Kinross carry out through, and to this end, we propose to give every one of them a 7.5% uplift this year to help counter current inflation rates and help them with increased demand as we slowly recover from COVID-19. Because it's the right thing to do, in the memory of our friend and colleague Henry Anderson, the SNP group are allocating £50,000 to help provide community facilities and play areas around Nard, which are badly needed. I and the SNP group believe that whilst we do not always agree with other elected members, we all have a part to play in representing our communities. We feel that the proposed level of elected member support is inadequate. As a new intake of councillors will venture into 2 High Street in May, they must have adequate support rooms and facilities to do their jobs properly. That is to represent the electorate of Perth and Kinross. To be able to deliver their democratic duties, we commit £80,000 to reverse recent reductions in levels of support. This can be funded by the review of support given to senior management. Finally, we commit £4.3 million to roads and road safety issues. Again, I will defer to my colleagues to go into detail on these proposals, except one. The Stewart Tower A9 link road has been included in the SNP budget for many years and has been voted down by the Conservative administration, including my Tory ward colleagues, Councillors James and Councillor Jarvis. At the last budget meeting, Councillor James stated that was in the schedule to be done in 2023 or 2024. After inquiring with officers, although it is planned in the planned scheme of works, there is no guarantee that it will remain there if another new project that is deemed more urgent surfaces. Therefore, I again ask the Conservative elected members of Strathty Ward to go into the recess and ask the Leader of the Council to adopt this part of our budget amendment into his motion. This would guarantee these improvements will be carried out, and I'm sure this would be most welcome for the residents in the neighbouring villages. We feel that this budget also supports business by encouraging new technologies into Perth and by leaving money in the pockets of the people and organisations within Perth and Kinross. This enhances the trickle-up economy and this benefits the businesses up Perth and Kinross. I would like to thank the officers who have been involved in this, who have performed their jobs diligently and at times gone over and above the call of duty. I would now like to commend this SNP budget amendment to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lane. Can I now invite Councillor Drysdale to second it?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I want to start by thanking all officers of the Council for their unswerving commitment to maintaining key services throughout these last 2 difficult years of pandemic. Their efforts have been heroic and hugely appreciated by residents across Perth and Kinross. It follows that none of what I'm about to say should be taken as any form of criticism of them. However, there is something sadly lacking at PKC, not just for the last 2 years, but for the last 5. Political leadership and direction has been conspicuous by its absence since 2017, and this complete vacuum has resulted in extensive dither and delay by this administration, led by Boris Johnson's Tories. For example, despite persistent pressure from the SNP group and others, 5 years have elapsed in which these Conservatives have failed to approve the PH2O project, and while they may finally rubber stamp it today, that procrastination has resulted in a doubling of the cost to 90 million. That is unforgivable. As expected, we have already heard the Tories get their excuses in early, and of course it's SNP bad with allegations of underfunding. What a load of tosh, Deputy Provost. Indeed, officers will be able to confirm to elected members that in the last 3 years alone, the SNP Scottish Government has provided funding in relation to education services to the extent of over 21 million, largely for early learning, childcare expansion and teachers' pay and pensions. Social care have also received almost 7 million, with a further 15 to 16 million to come to the HSCP in 22-23. And let's not forget, of course, the 52.7 million of COVID support funding. In total, over 90 million in 3 years and more on its way for the next financial year. Our SNP Scottish Government has provided this level of support despite having one hand tied behind its back because 11 Downing Street will not allow our Holyrood Parliament to borrow to fund its plans and ambitions. Although, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, no doubt he is being put up to that by his noisy partying next door neighbour. Back here in law-abiding Perth and Kinross, we should and must follow the Scottish Government's prudent and measured approach to helping and guiding our people towards better times again. And in this regard, the SNP group promises action and ambition in contrast to the dither and delay of Boris's Tories. Our revenue budget amendment presents fully funded proposals that will provide increased resources to support post-pandemic health and well-being recovery and economic stability, increase welfare rights support and provide grant support to private sector tenants to ensure everyone has a warm home and a roof over their heads, support families and communities to return to a new normal and sustainable way of life while living safely with the virus, substantially increase and improve our local resilience in the face of future weather-related events and public health emergencies, etc., and build a cleaner and, very importantly, a greener Perth and Kinross. In addition, we will improve the safety and quality of our road transport network for the benefit of all road users. Councillor Lang has already set out some of our measures in detail, and I shall now cover these other key proposed spends within our ambitious action-based budget. On health and wellbeing, the SNP will provide 600,000 additional funding to Live Active Leisure to compensate for loss of income during pandemic restrictions and to help Live Active Leisure preserve existing venues and services, as my emergency motion today would have set out had it been allowed earlier. In addition, via the Health and Social Care Partnership, we will put £250,000 to fund many more opportunities for supported physical activities for people with mental health issues, physical disabilities and/or underlying health conditions. Furthermore, we will support the highly valued work of self-help groups such as Andy's Man Club, Man Talk, Perth Lighthouse and the Women's Wellbeing Club to the tune of £100,000. On welfare, supporting families and financial inclusion, we shall seek to ensure nobody is unsupported. We will fund 3 additional welfare rights officers and separately launch a £600,000 fund to help ensure private sector tenants can receive a level of grant support that mirrors existing measures for council tenants. Nobody should be left behind as Scotland recovers. With inflation and energy costs already rising to frightening levels, and the Westminster Tory government unforgivably about to impose a 10.4% rise in national insurance, which will impact those on low incomes most of all, we need to do all we can to stand up for P&K residents in the face of this onslaught. On local resilience, we know that there have been many concerns at the level of resource available to support people suffering flooding and other weather-related adversity. We shall therefore significantly increase this resource locally rather than via an Aberdeen-based call centre, because local knowledge is so important in dealing with such emergencies. We would specifically include this service in this service upgrade the development of a PKC-specific mobile phone app, which would become the highly accessible go-to source of vital, up-to-date information on floods, school closures, road conditions, and so much more. On a cleaner Perth and Kinross, we will properly fund the resources and measures necessary to tackle the scourges of fly tipping, littering and dog fouling which spoil our countryside and towns and city. And we will use community payback teams to deep clean problem areas. On a greener Perth and Kinross, we will provide grants totalling over £1 million to encourage green growth, to stimulate investment in innovative green heat transfer technology, and to support community transitions to renewable power private supplies. In addition, in recognition of the need to improve biodiversity, we will start to fund a programme of planting wildflowers and trees in open spaces, while also supporting local bloom groups. And finally, on the road transport network, we have put together a £4.3 million funding package that will accelerate rollout of puffin crossings at priority locations, will fund mobile devices to detect and deter illegal driving manoeuvres, such as in Florence Place, Perth within my ward, and will enable us to carry out quality urgent road repairs and upgrade bridges and other similar structures. Deputy Provost, I could go on, but I suspect you want me to wind up now, so I will, with one final point addressed directly to the people, our bosses, who in just 10 weeks' time go to the polls. If this amendment fails today, outvoted by the Tories and any allies they can muster, that would be a great shame, but it is democracy in action. However, this SNP group pledges that if you elect us on 5th May to take Perth and Kinross forward, we will seek to bring our budget back at the earliest opportunity thereafter, and replace the dither and delay of the Tories with SNP action and ambition. Deputy Provost, I am delighted and proud to second this amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Drysdale. We now move on to Councillor Wilson to move the second amendment, to propose the second amendment, and his motion will be in your email box now. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and I'd like to start off by paying a warm thanks to all the finance staff and other officers who've helped in the preparation of the respective budgets. It'll come as a bit of a surprise that I want to start off my speech to propose the Lib Dem amendment and our budget. To agree with Murray Lyle, first of all, I agree that his words, really challenging, are absolutely appropriate to this occasion. In fact, I want to return to that just in a moment or two, Deputy Provost. And I want to even agree with Councillor Grant Lang to say what really matters to people in Perth and Kinross, and I'll elaborate on that as well just in a few moments. How have we got here, Deputy Provost, is a question we might ask ourselves, because in our report on page 30, paragraph 10.4, it speaks about the structural deficit that this council have in its budget of 10.33 million. This council has got a reputation for good financial sound management, and that's well deserved, and it's a credit to both the staff and elected members that is part of our reputation, and it's been recognised by the Audit Commission. So why have we got into a situation where we've got a structural deficit of 10.33 million? There are several reasons. One of the main reasons, however, Deputy Provost, is we've had an SNP Scottish Government council tax freeze for nearly 10 years, which has meant a huge reduction in the amount of recurring revenue expenditure that this council can accumulate, because when you have a council tax freeze, the accumulator factor and small increases of council tax year on year do not apply. And we're over £10 million every year in deficit because of that council tax freeze, and that's been indicated in previous questions and reports to the council. Secondly, we have year-on-year cuts in our funding from the Scottish Government, and if we go to page 12 and para 511, there's this year in real terms we're £2.28 million short of what we should have, at least what we should have received. There's an added problem and difficulty and that is contributing towards the structural deficit, and also to what Councillor Lyle said was really challenging. Ring fencing, and let's not use weasel words like partnership agenda and joint initiatives and whatever. The increase in ring fencing from our current SNP Scottish Government has gone from 4% in 2018-19 to 17.9% in 22-23. That's an eye-watering amount in something like 5 years. That means that all of that money is there at the behest of the Scottish Government's policies, not the policies of the electors and the elected members in Perth and Kinross. And if Councillor Lang and his colleagues want to really start resolving some of the problems, that's the first one they should have been tackling with their political masters in Holyrood. There's no excuse for that, and there's no reason for it, and it's simply another example of centralised control. However, we have the Finance Minister, Kate Forbes, riding to our rescue at the last minute, not the Greens this time, but Kate Forbes herself, who found some money, to 3.23 million non-recurring. Some say that this has been described in local government terms as a sofa money found round the back, from previous savings. However, its non-recurring basis is simply going to add, Deputy Provost and colleagues, to the difficulties in the future, because it can't be built in to any budget, and that is reprehensible. Our proposals that for this are to help communities, to protect services and to protect individuals, particularly those who are vulnerable in our society. We're proposing 3.49, as is outlined in the papers, of a council tax increase. And we want to firstly reject a number of suggested cuts in services. We want to reject the community green space and grounds maintenance savings of 66k and 35k and 95k that are proposed. We want to reject the winter maintenance proposals, the three of them that amount to 322 and 75k. These are important. They involve how tidy and neat our parks and recreation and outdoor spaces are. It also impacts directly on community safety, business continuation and the health and well-being of our communities, to demonstrate clearly that we have adequate winter maintenance arrangements. We've recently experienced that in many parts of Perth and Kinross, Deputy Provost, and I think the challenges that our Teesside contracts and road maintenance partnership colleagues meet are real and they're varied. They're not only just gritting, there's flooding, there's dealing with winds, there's dealing with storms as well. My colleagues on the group will speak to other rejects of proposed savings. Within the detail of what we want to see, we want to have a structural deficit transformation fund that will free up transformation project management capacity by backfilling posts for managers dedicated to the transformation project. That will be non-recurring, but it will get us off to a flying start in getting people appointed to the posts that are necessary in the transformation agenda. In terms of town and city centre regeneration, we want a figure of 250k allocated on a non-recurring basis to adapt property and have an open for business fund to extend funding from previous fully utilised non-recurring funding that for another year, that will allow businesses to prosper and hopefully aid them in the post-COVID recovery process. We want, in terms of tree and woodland management, this is the woodland and tree management that's the council's responsibility, to devote 50k to increase the budget that would allow inspection and management of the trees that are under our control. If ever there was a time to propose this, it's now, because of the recent storms we've had and the considerable damage that's been caused within the council's ownership. We want to see 200k in road safety projects, and other people will speak about that in more detail, Deputy Provost. And we want to see initiatives in other areas, which my colleagues will add to shortly. And Councillor Peter Barrett, in seconding, will deal with some of the other details. Deputy Provost, I'm proud to present the amendment from the Liberal Democrats as one that will achieve great benefit to members of our communities throughout Perth and Kinross and will result in improvements in the next financial year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. And I now invite Councillor Peter Barrett to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. There is an element of Groundhog Day to this budget setting meeting. COSLA have once again produced a budget reality document. It's a shame that Councillor Eric Drysdale hasn't bothered to read it, because with facts it counters the Scottish Government spin, which tries to confuse real terms cuts to councils' core budgets with increases in overall funding, glossing quickly over the cost of new ring-fence spending initiatives and increasing protected spend and centralisation. This sort of financial jiggery-pokery is almost as old and as unscrupulous as the 3-cup street scam. Now you see it, now you don't, but you never get your money back. And this year's swinging cuts to local government were imposed by the SNP and Greens at Holyrood. Recurring cuts to core budgets of £371 million, ameliorated by only £120 million worth of non-recurring money spun as additional funding. And paragraph 511 of the report is helpful in pointing out the year-on-year reduction in council funding of 0.81% before the impact of inflation is even taken into account. And amongst those inflationary pressures we have to face are the increased national insurance contributions. The timing of these in the midst of a cost of living crisis as food prices and energy bills spiral is bad enough from Boris Johnson, but having our pockets picked by Kate Forbes, who received Barnett consequentials to meet the specific pressure but hasn't passed them on, that isn't just insulting to councils, it is injurious to them. Sadly and unaccountably, the administration and other opposition groups didn't think this was worth making a fuss about while there was still a chance, however slim, of changing the Scottish Government's mind. And as I said in December, councils are being treated less favourably than other parts of the public sector in Scotland and less favourably than councils in England, and reductions in incomes, cuts to services and loss of jobs will be the result. The budget reality this year is given central prominence in the covering report. Front page, first bullet, and helpfully in bold text, is the structural deficit of £7.614 million. And as it says in paragraph 6.4, this is unsustainable. But the Liberal Democrats budget looks to the medium-term transformations and council tax base required to tackle this. So, Provost, moving on from the unfair settlement, I'm pleased to second Councillor Wilson, who has proposed the Scottish Liberal Democrats budget amendment. We have attempted to stave off the most damaging cuts and the most unpalatable proposals, knowing that none of them have been put forward without careful consideration, but because there is simply nowhere else to go. We believe it is vital that the Council continues to demonstrate leadership in its employment of young people and a strong commitment to developing opportunities and skills for young people. And that's why we're rejecting under the Organise to Deliver heading the proposal to reduce the modern apprenticeship budget by £150,000 and will instead retain the capacity to support 16 young people and build their careers and concentrate on providing opportunities for young people from disadvantaged background. Our additional £150,000 funding for the Economic Wellbeing Plan will further support opportunities for young people and those furthest from the job market. We are rejecting the removal of school crossing patrollers and the removal of school swimming lessons. There does seem to be a disconnect between spending £90 million on a replacement Perth leisure pool and complex and stopping swimming lessons, Provost. The removal of the last £152,000 of the school supply contingency budget also is a step too far. Its impact will hit smaller schools hardest, those with the least capacity to provide cover for extended absence, and for those reasons we have reinstated that saving. Responding to the growing concerns about antisocial behaviour, the Liberal Democrats, when considering the housing and revenue budget, these concerns were amplified in the budget consultation, coming as the second top priority. So in addition to the 38,000 that the Liberal Democrats secured within the HRA, we are proposing another 25,000 for community safety measures. And my colleague Councillor Liz Barrett will say more about this and also about our response to the climate emergency, also identified as a public priority, and the additional 150,000 towards unfunded actions in the Climate Change Action Plan that we will invest in. Our proposal is for a modest increase of council tax of 3.49%, about 12.5 pence per day increase for a Band D property, less than £1 a week. We recognise that these are increasingly hard times with the cost of living crisis for families and individuals, but to go lower will only stoke up challenges for the next council and what is needed to tackle the structural deficit. Whilst introducing a modest council tax increase, we are committed to investing more in targeted support for those most at risk and in the greatest need. Our approach to this budget has been to avoid making unsustainable new financial commitments. There is no plethora of recurring expenditure proposals. The one exception that we have made is the creation of 2 new welfare officer posts, recognising the significant increase in hardship, the increased demand for welfare rights support and advice, and how increasingly complex and complicated the welfare architecture has become. The fairness impacts, the immediate prevention of poverty, and on tackling inequalities and supporting our most vulnerable members in the community justify the exception that we are prepared to make, and that is why we are devoting £76,000 to increasing the welfare rights team and enhancing the support that this council can provide and make a real difference to preventing people becoming trapped in poverty, in debt and despair. Provost, I welcome the recommendation to delay the implementation of the review of adult social work and social care contributions policies. These changes cause considerable anxiety amongst the equalities community, particularly the financial impact upon people of working age with a learning disability. Provost, I was struck by paragraph 9.9, bullet 1, upfront investment in prevention and early intervention. Bullet 4, prioritise transformation investment on spend to save and cost mitigation activities, and new priorities such as community investment to support the offer, climate change and economic well-being. Provost, it is almost as if these paragraphs had been written with the Scottish Liberal Democrats budget in mind. This is exactly what drives the Community Asset Transfer Enablement Fund, pretty much exactly what it says on the tin, but making a difference to getting community ownership of surplus assets moving and improving Perth and Kinross Council's performance in an area where under the present administration we are lagging badly. Similarly, the Perth and Kinross Offer Community Empowerment Transition Fund is to enhance the Council's Think Yes ability and to support community-based initiatives to start to tackle the structural deficit, enablement funding to allow testing, proof of concept and assess scalability of locality and community prevention initiatives and spend to save projects. Provost, this is what drives the Liberal Democrat budget proposals. Enabling communities, tackling inequalities, action on the climate emergency, empowering communities, providing support and capacity for transformation, Think Yes, support for town and city centres and a fairer recovery. And Provost, I recommend it to you and to Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barrett. I now invite Councillor Bailey to move the third amendment, and his amendment will be circulated now via email. Councillor.
Thank you. In a year when we are facing a severe cost of living crisis, I'm proud to propose this independent and Scottish Labour budget, which proposes no council tax rise. That's right, no council tax rise. Not only are we not raising the tax, we're also giving the people their money back. This budget includes a £7.5 million pot to help all households with the hardships that this year will undoubtedly bring. That's £100 per household. This budget is one that doesn't take, it gives back in this time of crisis. It gives back without cutting services. You'll want to know how we're doing this. It's simple. In a year when households are having to dig deep to afford the necessities of life, this council should not be hoarding money for a rainy day when the torrential rain is already here for so many people. The pressures of COVID recovery and the looming energy crisis mean that this day is about as rainy as they come. Clearly, a certain level of reserves is prudent, and this amendment leaves plenty to cover unexpected weather events. But then, I suppose we have to ask ourselves whether these costly weather events can any longer be referred to as unexpected. There's clearly a cost benefit to us getting a grip on climate change. Because of that, we're going further than the proposal does on climate change. We're offering practical action to support our residents with climate change with an additional £1 million for insulation of homes. This will help those on low incomes to insulate their own homes to help them weather this coming storm. If we're to insulate ourselves from future spikes in energy markets, we have to become more self-sufficient. Therefore, the budget amendment includes £100,000 of funding to develop council and cooperative owned energy generation projects, making the council and our communities more self-sufficient for energy. So many of our rural villages are actually separated by roads. Take my ward as an example. I can see Longforgan from my own house in Inchture, but to get there I have to cycle within 1 metre of the A90 carriageway for most of that distance. Nearby, the residents of West Kinforms have to make do with a white line where you might otherwise expect a pavement to be. Therefore, we're investing £1 million into safe walking and cycling routes between rural towns and villages to encourage further modal shift towards green travel.
Bailey.
Councillor McDade, have you frozen?
Bailey.
Sorry, Councillor Bailey.
I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear you now, yes.
Great. On public transport, we'll be bringing forward the People's Bus Pilot again, which will see the council run buses for public good and not private profit. 2 members of this council have asked in the past year whether this is a possibility due to routes being cut in their wards. I've done the homework along with my colleagues and I have the answer. It is possible if you back this budget. We also have to build better public transport. That's why we're again providing money for a series of feasibility studies to assess whether more rail stations and lines will help address transport inequalities. There's money for studies into stations for Stanley and Bertha Park, the direct rail link to Edinburgh via Kinross, and even a study into whether light rail models can help to reconnect our former borough towns to the rail network. Proud to be rejecting cuts to frontline services, putting the supply contingency back for small schools, and we're rejecting the cuts to primary school teacher numbers. I've had a lot of mail about school crossing patrollers, especially about our superstar crossing patroller we have in Invergowrie. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Traffic lights supervise the cars but not the kids. Crossing patrollers supervise the kids too, and especially in primary that's needed to keep everyone safe. Crossing patrollers give the parents the confidence to send their kids along to school without ferrying them in a car. And it goes without saying that swimming lessons are kept because they give folk the confidence to enjoy that exercise in later life. And as a colleague mentioned earlier, it would be silly to invest in the swimming pool but not the swimming lessons. We're rejecting winter maintenance capacity cuts and putting money in for more help yourself gritting setups. Our key worker housing project will support better housing options for those working in vital roles such as health, social care and emergency services in rural Perthshire. We've included £100,000 for Live Active Leisure if they're able to defer the coaching hall changes for a proper consultation to be undertaken. And I'd like to end on the best bit last. We're also proposing a £10 million Future Services Wealth Fund, a fund that will protect the people of Perth and Kinross from future financial challenges. Operating in a similar way to sovereign wealth funds, this will provide the capital to start a Perth and Kinross Wealth Fund. For the first 10 years, any income from asset disposal, along with revenue consequentials from any reduction in the size of the capital budget, will be invested to continue the growth of the capital. After 10 years of building the capital, the interest will be available to spend to support the revenue budget without touching the capital pot. In conclusion, this is a budget that doesn't take from the people of Perth and Kinross, it gives back to them. It protects from cuts but doesn't cost the earth. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Brock, I invite you to second.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Today, I'm proud to second this progressive budget, which is focused on supporting hard-pressed families struggling with the cost of living crisis. Our businesses recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and our communities to become more sustainable. Our budget focuses on putting as much money back in the pockets of Perth and Kinross residents to help ensure that none of them have to choose between heating or eating. To help ensure this, we have frozen the council tax for this year. Recognising that this is a regressive tax, I'm also delighted to be able to support a £7.5 million cost of living tax rebate, which equates to £100 for every household to help them with their time of need as prices soar. This is what the council should be about, helping prevent our residents from suffering and supporting them to thrive. However, we know that the past 2 years have taken their toll on our citizens, which is why we have put a number of support measures in to help support them. We have allocated £100,000 to support mental health initiatives in recognition of the significant impact the pandemic and cost of living crisis has had on people's well-being. The lockdown restrictions also saw a significant rise in domestic abuse, putting additional pressures on essential support services for the victims of this awful crime. Our budget therefore makes provision for an additional £30,000 for Perthshire Women's Aid on a recurring basis to help take financial pressure off this important charity, and an additional £20,000 to support the Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre. We have also committed £100,000 to an Equalities Fund to enable the Council to address inequalities arising from the recent pandemic and cost of living crisis. We also know that our public libraries are crucial to helping address inequalities in our rural areas by providing a welcoming and supportive environment to those seeking work or training. They are vital centres in our community, which is why we have committed an additional £146,000 on a recurring basis to Culture Perth and Kinross. This will ensure the retention of all rural library services, including communities like Comrie and my ward, who rely heavily on the library for access to services. However, we know that other forms of culture are important for our communities, and this is why we have also provided £135,000 to Horsecross Arts to help them recover from the pandemic and continue their excellent work. It's not only culture that is important to our communities, but sport also provides a key role in ensuring community well-being, which is why I'm delighted to announce a new Access to Curling initiative to support access to curling, following the wonderful Team GB results at the recent Winter Olympics. Providing funding for services is not much help if many of our citizens living in rural areas struggle to access them due to poor transport. Therefore, we have made a new provision of £100,000 for new additional late-night buses in our rural areas, which will also enable our young people to make the most of the free bus travel. But it's not only our residents who are seeking to support. Our tourism economy has suffered greatly over the past 2 years and needs all the support it can get. Basic service provision of things like public toilets is important, and this is why we have rejected savings in this area in Dunkeld and Blairgowrie, and also restored the year-round council public toilet provision for Crieff. This brings it in line with our other major tourist destinations and allows the local business community to focus on recovery. We also want our communities to look their best, so not only have we rejected savings that would reduce the appearance of our community's green spaces, but we have also put an extra £30,000 in for local bloom and path groups. Ours is a budget focused on supporting families deal with the cost of living crisis and create more sustainable communities post-COVID. Deputy Provost, I commend this amendment to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brock. Now, can I ask if there are any other further amendments, please? I will be surprised if there's one, but I'm open to any surprises today. So, no, I'm delighted that there are no. Oh, Councillor Lane, you've got a point of order. Thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I was just wondering. Normally capitals, when you put them out, are shouting out in the meeting. I was just wondering if we could get clarity from Councillor James what he meant with his shout in the middle of the SNP amendment, which he has since deleted, but he's not apologised for. So if we could just have some clarity of what that comment was about and why he was shouting in the middle of the committee meeting, council budget meeting.
Councillor Lane, perhaps he didn't mean to have his microphone on. It's quite difficult sometimes. The microphone.
It was in chat. It was in the chat.
Right. I'm sorry, I didn't notice it.
Well,
so
I'm asking, could you ask him to clarify why he was shouting?
Councillor James.
I don't think I need to, because I know they're electioneering and the elections are coming up. So it's been deleted. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for your motions and amendments. It is now 18 minutes past 11, so we are now going to have 1 hour recess, and you all know which room you to go to and the officers will be present. Then following the recess will be the lunch. So the officers are only available for the first hour, then they're having the lunch. So we will reconvene at 1:20. Anyone got any questions on what I've just said?
It's a question from
Councillor Barnacle.
Will we get a comparison of
Yes.
all the motions?
Yes. Yes, that will be available by email for those of you who are at home, and some hard copies for those who are in the rooms. Councillor Drysdale, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Provost. It was just to clarify, after the difficulty I had getting in at the start of the meeting, can we just confirm that we are closing off this meeting and joining a separate meeting?
Yes, that is correct. Leave this meeting and will be a new join in the afternoon, and we will allow a minute or two for people to get back in, so we will not punish you if you're not there exactly at 1:20. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll do a roll call in the afternoon as well. Thank you.